Look at your life right now. I mean, really look at it. You sleep your 8 hours, you drink your 2 liters of water, right?
Right, the whole routine.
Exactly. You meticulously track your macros, you take your D3 and omega supplements, and yet by 2:00 p.m., you're staring at your screen, feeling completely inexplicably drained.
Yeah, that classic afternoon slump.
It's more than a slump, though.
Mm.
You have this, like, low-level brain fog that never quite lifts, and this hum of anxiety vibrating in the background of your day. And today, we're exploring an ancient scientific text that claims your exhaustion has absolutely nothing to do with your sleep schedule, or your vitamin intake, for that matter.
Which is a pretty wild claim, I know.
Totally. It claims you have a literal physiological leak in your fundamental life force.
Yeah, and the book we are unpacking today is called Brahmacharya by Pratik Prajapati, and we really need to establish the baseline immediately here.
So let's do that.
Because Prajapati is not offering some feel-good, modern self-help pamphlet. He is translating and contextualizing a really rigorous ancient Vedic science.
Right, this isn't a quick fix.
Exactly. This text treats the human body and mind not as a mechanical engine that just, needs the right fuel, but as a highly sophisticated, energetic vessel. It outlines a systematic protocol for total control over your trajectory by managing what the ancients considered our most critical and honestly, currently most squandered resource.
I mean, we are really going to deconstruct this ancient science of vital energy today. And the goal for this deep dive is to move entirely past the superficial internet trends you might associate with that word, right? Brahmacharya.
Oh, absolutely. We have to get past that.
We're going to look under the hood at the mechanics of prana, which is life force, understand its ultimate physical concentration in the body, and examine this really profound claim that reclaiming this energy can trigger a radical physiological and cognitive transformation.
And, I mean, the scale of Prajapati's argument is staggering. He proposes that the widespread lethargy, the depression, and chronic anxiety of the modern world, they aren't just psychological epidemics to be managed with therapy or medication.
Right.
He frames them as the direct, inescapable result of a culture that systematically drains our vital electricity. He's diagnosing the modern condition as a severe, chronic depletion of prana.
That's a huge paradigm shift. Because normally we view the body as this machine, right? You put in protein, carbs, vitamins, and you expect output.
Yeah, the mechanical view.
But the Vedic view he's presenting is that we are vessels running on this subtle electric-like current. But before we can map out how to build this energy, we really have to address the massive misconceptions surrounding the topic.
For sure. The internet has really warped this.
Completely. Because if you spend any time on self-improvement forums, you've seen the trends. The no-fat movement, basic semen retention challenges.
Yeah, the 30-day challenges and all that.
Right. You have influencers claiming that just by white-knuckling their way through 30 days of abstinence, they're going to become billionaires or like elite athletes.
And Prajapati tackles those modern movements head-on in the book. And his critique is sharp. He uses the term chichli.
Which means?
It translates to shallow. He uses that to describe them. He argues these trends fundamentally misunderstand the mechanism of human energy.
How so?
Well, they are attempting to treat a profound internal ecosystem with a really rudimentary external band-aid.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
If the goal of the science is conservation of this physical energy, isn't stopping the physical act the logical first step? Like, why does the text dismiss these modern retention challenges so aggressively?
The author asks us to look at the psychological reality of someone actually participating in those challenges. They are clamping down on a physical release, right? Like acting like a pressure valve that has just been welded shut.
Right, they're just holding it in.
Exactly. However, their internal environment remains entirely unchanged. They are still scrolling through highly sexualized imagery on Instagram. They're still consuming hyper-palatable processed foods.
They're still chasing cheap dopamine hits.
Yes. Digital gambling, endless entertainment.
So the fire under the pot is still roaring, but they've just trapped the steam.
That is the perfect visualization,
Right.
really. Prajapati points out that if the mind is continually stimulated by modern vices, the internal energy, the prana, is still being agitated. It's still being mobilized for release.
It has nowhere to go.
Right. By merely blocking the physical exit while the mind remains corrupted by lust or addiction, the practitioner creates severe internal turbulence.
Wow.
The text claims this doesn't lead to enlightenment or boundless energy. It leads to immense frustration, anger, and deep psychological agitation. It's just a state of constant exhausting friction.
It's the difference between true discipline and mere repression, I guess.
Exactly.
The author defines true Brahmacharya as a complete lifestyle, a Sampurna Jivanshali.
Yes, Sampurna Jivanshali.
He describes it as the absolute conscious governance of all bodily senses and mental faculties. It isn't about denying one specific physical act, right? It's a unified theory of filtering every single input that enters your consciousness.
Because every input affects the whole. I mean, the Vedic tradition, as outlined by Prajapati, asserts that the legendary intellects, the ancient scientists, the philosophical giants of India, they achieved their capacities not through genetics alone, but because this holistic science of sensory management was foundational to their education.
It's baked in.
Yeah. They were taught to harmonize the mind and the body so that energy naturally ascended, rather than, violently suppressing it while the mind remained a chaotic mess.
Hold on, I need to push back on the core premise here, though.
Okay.
We were talking about human biology. The drive for sexual release is, evolutionarily speaking, the most intense physical pleasure available to our species.
Sure, it ensures our survival.
Right. So why would an entire ancient science, this whole complete lifestyle, be built around intentionally denying our strongest biological imperative? It sounds almost anti-human,
And that tension is the very crux of the philosophy. Prajapati addresses it through a fundamental law of existence. The text leans heavily into a concept of equivalent exchange.
Like a transaction.
Exactly. The foundational rule of this physical reality is that to gain something of immense, unimaginable value, you must sacrifice something of equal, tangible value.
I see. You can't buy a mansion with pocket change. You have to spend serious capital.
Precisely the logic. The text openly acknowledges that kamecha, which is sexual desire and its fulfillment, is the supreme physical pleasure.
It doesn't deny it.
No, not at all. It is the pinnacle of worldly sensory experience. Prajapati doesn't deny the pleasure, he highlights its value. Because it is the most valuable currency of pleasure a human possesses, voluntarily sacrificing it is the only transaction capable of purchasing supreme physical and spiritual power.
Okay, wow. Framing it as an energetic transaction completely shifts the perspective. It's no longer about puritanical guilt or avoiding something dirty.
Not at all.
It's a ruthless, intentional investment strategy. You recognize that you hold this incredibly potent currency, and instead of blowing it on fleeting momentary pleasure, you decide to hoard it. You let it compound.
And Prajapati suggests that modern consumer culture is literally designed to make us spend that currency as cheaply and frequently as possible.
Oh, absolutely.
Society promises that absolute freedom means endless indulgence. But the text observes that this endless indulgence only leaves the individual hollowed out, lacking the raw, energetic capital needed for profound, creative, or spiritual endeavors.
All right, so to understand what we are actually hoarding, we need to define the currency itself. What is this fuel that runs the entire system?
Right, the prana.
Exactly. This brings us to the science of prana, and we really need to differentiate this immediately from the way it's usually tossed around in modern yoga studios.
Oh yeah, big time. The popular understanding of prana in the West usually equates it simply to breath, or specifically just oxygen.
Right, take a deep breath of prana.
Yeah, and Prajapati clarifies that this is a fundamental mistranslation. The text categorizes oxygen merely as pranvayu. Vayu means wind or air.
So oxygen is just the carrier.
Yes, oxygen is simply the physical carrier.
I was actually trying to wrap my head around this distinction earlier. If oxygen is the copper wire running through your house, prana is the actual electricity moving through that wire.
It's a great way to put it.
The wire is essential for delivery, but the wire itself won't turn on the light bulb.
That captures the Vedic perspective perfectly. Prajapati defines prana as the fundamental, subtle life energy that animates physical matter.
And he uses death as an example, right?
He does. The text offers the moment of physical death as the ultimate proof of this distinction. When a human being dies, the physical structure remains entirely intact. The cellular material, the water, the minerals, the oxygen in the surrounding air, all the physical elements are present.
A medical scan might find no missing biological substance.
Right. Yet the body is inanimate. So the Vedic scientist asks, what departed? And the answer is prana.
So expanding on that electrical analogy, if the physical body, the bones, organs, nervous system is the hardware, and our thoughts, memories, and personality are the software.
Neither of those layers can function without a power source.
Exactly. Prana is the battery life. Yeah. And when that battery drops to 10%, the system starts glitching.
And Prajapati details the symptoms of a low prana state. and they read like a clinical description of the modern workforce.
Tell me about it.
At the physical level, a depletion of prana manifests as severe laziness. The text uses the term ulsi. It's not just needing a rest, It's an absolute lack of the vital drive required to initiate action.
You procrastinate because the body literally lacks the energetic threshold to move forward.
Exactly.
And it cascades into the software layer, too. It's not just heavy limbs, it's a heavy mind.
The psychological symptoms of low prana are profound. The text argues that a mind lacking this vital electricity becomes scattered and unfocused. The heart space fills with dead, stagnant emotions.
Wow.
Prajapati draws a direct line between this energetic depletion and modern states of deep depression, chronic anxiety, and existential dread. Furthermore, the intellect becomes dull.
He even links it to morality, right?
He does. The text suggests that a lack of prana leads to unrighteous or deceitful behavior, simply because the individual lacks the internal fortitude to uphold their moral values against external pressure.
Because doing the right thing takes energy.
It takes a lot of energy.
So if we're all walking around in this low power mode, the obvious question is, where's the leak? Why is our battery constantly draining?
And Prajapati's answer points directly at our modern physical environment.
This part blew my mind. He categorizes places and things by their inherent prana levels, and his assessment of where we spend our time is just grim.
He describes the quintessential modern environments: corporate office buildings, hermetically sealed air-conditioned rooms, sprawling shopping malls, movie theaters.
Places we go every day.
Right. He describes them as essentially pranaless zones. These are energetic voids.
They're completely sterile. You have recycled dead air. You have artificial fluorescent lighting instead of sunlight. You are physically insulated from the magnetic and energetic rhythms of the earth by concrete and rubber.
And Prajapati argues that existence in these spaces is parasitic to the human energy system.
Parasitic, that's a strong word.
Because these environments possess no life force of their own, your body must constantly expend its own stored prana just to maintain equilibrium and vitality within a void. You are bleeding energy into the sterile room just to stay awake.
Which explains why you can sit in an ergonomic chair, staring at a spreadsheet for 4 hours, do zero physical labor, and feel like you've run a marathon.
Yes.
Contrast that with hiking for 4 hours in a dense forest, breathing air, physically interacting with plant life and sunlight. You expend massive physical effort, but you return feeling energized.
We feel this instinctively, but the text frames it as a literal, measurable transfer of subtle electricity.
And this concept of energetic transfer becomes incredibly stark when Prajapati addresses diet.
Oh, the dietary rules are intense.
Because eating is the most intimate way we interact with our environment, right? The rules regarding the prana of food are absolute. The text quotes a monumental figure in Ayurveda, the sage Vagbhata, who established a defining metric. He said, "Food that has not been touched by sunlight and pure wind is like poison."
I really want to sit with that quote because it effectively invalidates the majority of the modern Western diet.
I mean, think about it. Vagbhata is saying that anything cooked in a dark, sealed factory, anything sealed in plastic for months, anything microwaved in a box.
These are dead entities. They contain zero prana.
According to the Ayurvedic framework Prajapati presents, stale food, heavily processed items, and notably meat and eggs, all fall into this category of pranaless dead matter.
Let's break down the mechanics of why eating dead food is so catastrophic, though. Because if a food has zero prana, you might assume it's just neutral, right? Empty calories.
Right.
But the text argues it's an active negative. And why? Because digestion is arguably the most energy-intensive autonomous process the human body performs.
It takes so much work.
It requires a tremendous concentration of your internal fire, your stored prana, to break down dense physical matter, extract nutrients, and expel waste.
So it's a thermodynamic transaction.
Exactly the right framework. If you consume a piece of fresh fruit, an item that grew in direct sunlight, exchanging gases with the wind, plucked and eaten near its source, it requires a small expenditure of your internal energy to digest.
But the payout is huge.
Right. The fruit releases a massive payload of vibrant stored prana back into your system. It is a highly profitable transaction. Your battery charge increases.
But if you eat a fast food meal, or a packaged frozen dinner,
you are introducing entirely dead, inert matter into your gastrointestinal tract. Your body must still marshal a massive amount of its stored prana to secrete acids, contract muscles, and force this matter through the digestive system.
But it gets nothing back.
Because the food is dead, it yields absolutely zero subtle energy in return. It is a catastrophic energetic loss. You are literally draining the electricity from your brain and your limbs to fuel your stomach's desperate attempt to clear the poison.
This completely explains the food coma.
Yes.
We think it's just blood rushing to the stomach.
Yeah.
But Prajapati is saying you have bankrupted your daily allotment of life force to process a dead burger. And doing this 3 times a day, every day, while sitting in a pranaless office. I mean, no wonder society is chronically depressed. We are suffocating our own electrical grid.
Prajapati posits that this radical shift in lifestyle, abandoning sunlit fields and fresh, prana-rich foods for artificial boxes and processed dead sustenance, is the primary driver behind the skyrocketing global rates of mental illness. We are trying to run sophisticated biological software on a depleted, dying battery.
Okay, so we understand the ambient electricity, the prana flowing through the whole system. But if it's constantly circulating, how does the body store it?
Right, where is the battery?
Yeah, how does it build up enough charge to enact the kind of superhuman changes the text hints at? This requires us to look at the ultimate concentration of this energy, a substance the text refers to as Virya.
And if prana is the ambient electricity keeping the lights on in the house, Virya is the master capacitor. It is the densest, most refined, and most powerful storage mechanism for life force within the human physiology.
And this is where we run into the biggest translation barrier. Because if you drop Virya into a modern dictionary, it spits out semen or reproductive fluid.
Yeah, and Prajapati addresses this directly. He argues that reducing Virya to a mere biological reproductive fluid is a tragic reductionist error.
It misses the whole point.
It strips the substance of its profound energetic reality. To modern science, it is just a cocktail of proteins, enzymes, and genetic material. To the Vedic scientist, it is the distilled essence of human potential.
It's like discovering a flawless multi-million-dollar diamond, having no concept of its rarity or value, and deciding to use it as a rock to smash a car window.
What an analogy.
You are looking at the most precious condensed substance available to you and using it for a fleeting, destructive, mundane act simply because you don't understand what it is.
That analogy perfectly captures the author's frustration with modern habits. Prajapati emphasizes that Virya must be understood as the fundamental, foundational quality of a man's existence.
The text uses elemental metaphors to clarify this, right?
It does. It asks the reader to consider the fundamental quality of the sun, which is light. If you remove the light, it ceases to be a sun. The fundamental quality of fire is heat. The fundamental quality of sugar is sweetness.
You cannot extract the sweetness and still call it sugar. The essence is the identity.
Following that logic, the text states that Virya is the fundamental quality that defines human vitality, courage, and fortitude. It is the literal, energetic bedrock.
So it affects everything.
Everything.
Right.
It dictates the physical density of the bones, the resilience of the nervous system, and the psychological capacity to face adversity. It is the raw material required not just to procreate, but to build societies, establish moral frameworks, and protect culture.
So, by treating it merely as a vehicle for momentary pleasure and constantly expelling it, a person is systematically hollowing out their own courage. They are eroding their capacity to stand firm in the world.
They are bankrupting their foundational capital. And to understand how this capital is built, Prajapati provides a really detailed physiological and energetic blueprint.
The 5 stages.
Exactly. He deconstructs the manifestation of this energy into 5 distinct stages, using the analogy of a tree's life cycle. From a subtle flower to a fruit to a seed to a plant, and finally to a deeply rooted tree.
This 5-stage progression is the absolute core of the text's science.
Right.
We really need to analyze each stage to understand how this energy matures. Stage 1 is referred to as the virtue form, or Gunavasa.
Sagudavasari.
What surprised me here is that this stage doesn't even exist in the physical body.
That is a critical point. The Gunavasa exists entirely within the subtle body, the energetic template that overlays the physical form. In this initial subtle state, Virya manifests as pure psychological willpower.
So it's not physical yet.
Not yet. It is the foundational drive toward righteousness, the instinct to protect the vulnerable, and the source of immense mental resilience.
It's almost like the blueprint of your character.
Exactly. Prajapati suggests that this subtle energy determines the actual density of a person's character. When you encounter someone with an unshakable presence, someone who remains calm and decisive in a crisis, the Vedic perspective attributes that to a highly developed Gunavasta. Their energetic blueprint is fortified.
Okay, then the energy steps down into the physical realm. Stage 2 is the life force form, or Pranavasta.
In the Pranavasta, the energy transitions into physical matter. but it is entirely dispersed. It permeates every single individual cell of the body.
And the text makes a fascinating biological correlation here, linking this dispersed energy directly to the immune system.
Prajapati's interpretation here is brilliant. He claims that in this pranavasta stage, the vital energy functions identically to our white blood cells.
Wow.
The text describes this energy as a legion of fierce warriors patrolling the bloodstream and the cellular walls, aggressively defending the body against pathogens, disease, and decay.
So if a person is constantly depleting their overall virya, they aren't just losing physical fluid, they are pulling these warriors away from the cellular walls.
Right, they're leaving the gates open.
They are actively suppressing their own immune response. Conversely, strict conservation literally fortifies the physical boundary against illness.
The science dictates that the denser the prana, the more impregnable the cellular structure becomes. But the energy continues its progression. It condenses further, bringing us to stage 3, the energy form, or Urjavasta.
Ah, Urjavasta. This is the volatile stage. This is where the dispersed cellular energy gathers into a raw, palpable force that you can actually feel humming in your nervous system.
The Urjavasta is the driving engine of all human action. Prajapati states that this raw urja translates directly into our most intense emotional states.
Both good and bad.
Yes, it fuels deep love, boundless enthusiasm, and profound compassion. But it equally fuels explosive anger, insatiable greed, and consuming lust.
Hold on. I'm struggling with this part a bit. If Urja is just raw energy, why is the text warning us against his highest manifestation? Like, if the goal is to have maximum energy and sexual arousal creates the most intense form of it, why is that a bad thing? Why suppress our most powerful battery?
Prajapati is very careful here. The text explicitly states that this raw urja is entirely neutral. It is neither inherently good nor evil. It is simply a highly reactive, incredibly powerful engine.
Okay.
The danger lies not in the energy itself, but in the direction the mind points it.
Like nuclear material.
Yeah.
You can build a reactor to power a continent, or you can build a weapon to level a city. The uranium doesn't care. It just provides the yield.
That is the exact dynamic. Prajapati observes that the absolute highest concentration, the most intense localized manifestation of this urja, occurs during sexual arousal. The energy rushes to a single point.
Right.
If this massively concentrated power is continually misdirected, squandered through artificial digital stimulation, pornography, or casual indulgence, it is rapidly and violently expelled from the human system.
And the aftermath is what the text calls being urjaheen.
Yes, devoid of energy, and utsahin, devoid of enthusiasm. The massive voltage drop leaves the nervous system shocked and depleted, resulting in the apathy and demotivation we see so commonly today.
But if you experience that exact same peak level of volatile energy, that intense arousal, and you do not expel it, if you hold that nuclear reaction inside the reactor, what happens?
This is where the practice of Brahmacharya moves from conservation to alchemy.
Alchemy, wow.
Prajapati states that if this intense urja is contained and channeled through discipline, focused work, or meditation, it transmutes. It turns into an unshakable drive to achieve one's highest goals. The raw sexual impulse is alchemized into creative genius, profound courage, and sustained magnetic charisma.
It's fascinating how this ancient Vedic concept perfectly mirrors what Napoleon Hill wrote about in Think and Grow Rich during the 1930s.
Oh, the sexual transmutation chapter.
Exactly. His entire chapter on sexual transmutation was about recognizing that the desire for sexual expression is the most powerful human stimuli. And if you can harness that exact physical feeling and redirect it toward your career or your art, you become unstoppable. Prajapati is outlining the exact biological mechanics of that transmutation from thousands of years ago.
The parallels are undeniable. The text then outlines stage 4, the seed form, or bijavasta. We can touch on this briefly, as it serves primarily as a transitional state in the Vedic framework.
Okay.
This is the stage where the energy finally condenses into the tangible biological reproductive fluid.
This is the stage modern biology focuses on exclusively. We look at the fluid under a microscope and think we understand the whole picture. But Prajapati views this biological manifestation merely as a bridge, a holding pattern before the final ultimate evolution.
Exactly. Modern science views the physical seed as the end product. The Vedic science of Brahmacharya views it as the chrysalis. If the seed, the bijavasa, is fiercely protected, conserved, and retained over a long period, it does not simply sit stagnant in the physical body.
It doesn't just build up physical pressure indefinitely until something breaks.
No. Through intense discipline, deliberate diet, and specific yogic practices, the retained energy undergoes a profound metamorphosis. It enters stage 5, the nectar form, or
The
amrutavastha.
final stage.
The text states that in this stage, the energy reverses its natural downward biological flow. It begins to flow upwards, ascending the spinal column to bathe the brain. A practitioner who successfully forces this energy upward is given the title Urdhvareta.
So the biological substance is refined back
Mhm.
into a highly volatile, subtle energy that hyperactivates the neurological centers.
Yes.
And the text mentions a very specific, almost unbelievable yogic practice associated with capturing this energy called the Kachari Mudra.
Oh, Kichari Mudra. It represents the extreme physical apex of this science. Prajapati describes a process where an advanced yogi will gradually, over years, sever the frenulum, the connective tissue beneath the tongue.
Okay, I have to jump in here because to a modern listener, cutting your own tongue tie to shove it into your nasal cavity sounds like pure madness. What possible physiological mechanism could justify that level of extreme body modification?
The claim made in the Vedic texts, which Prajapati relays, is that there is a literal physical junction at the base of the brain where this alchemized, upward flowing energy, this amruta or nectar, secretes.
Okay.
By sealing the nasal cavity with the tongue, the yogi creates a closed loop system. They physically catch and internally consume this secreting nectar, preventing it from being lost or degraded.
If we try to map that to modern biology, maybe it's an ancient way of describing a localized hormonal feedback loop. Perhaps by stimulating specific nerves in the upper palate, they are triggering the pineal or pituitary gland to continuously release highly refined neurochemicals endorphins, DMT, who knows directly back into the brain's receptors rather than letting them flush out into the bloodstream.
That is a highly plausible modern interpretation. Whatever the exact biological mechanism, the results described by Prajapati are staggering.
What happens when they do this?
The text claims that a yogi consuming this internal nectar becomes entirely self-sustaining. They can exist for decades without external food or water. The nectar unlocks photographic memory, superhuman periods of unbroken concentration, and ultimate spiritual liberation.
That's insane.
They have bypassed the need for Vagbhata's sunlit food because they are generating their own supreme prana internally.
We have escalated from trying to cure the 2.0 p.m. office slump to literally generating an immortal internal nectar that eliminates the need for food. That is the true scale of Brahmacharya.
It really is.
But it forces a harsh reality check. If this immense superhuman potential is hardwired into our biology, why are we all so anxious, tired, and thoroughly average?
Prajapati argues that the failure lies in the quality of the energy we are attempting to build and how aggressively modern society sabotages the process. The text outlines 3 distinct natures or categories of energy based on our inputs.
Right. Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic. Let's analyze these because Prajapati's breakdown directly challenges almost every modern health paradigm. Let's start with the ideal, Sattvic.
Sattvic Virya is the purest, most stable form of internal energy. Prajapati states it is cultivated through consistent spiritual practice, deep meditation, and a diet consisting strictly of pure, easily digestible plant-based foods that are consumed with the mindset of profound gratitude.
And the result of this Sattvic energy.
It generates immense intellectual brilliance, a state of deep, unshakable internal peace, and a calm, laser-like focus that can be sustained indefinitely without burnout.
So the ultimate flow state. But then we move to Rajasic energy. And Prajapati makes a claim here that is going to severely trigger anyone deeply entrenched in modern fitness or gym culture.
Oh, it is a highly controversial stance for the modern era. Prajapati asserts that Rajasic energy is derived primarily from consuming dense, high-protein diets, specifically meat, eggs, large quantities of heavy legumes, and massive amounts of soy.
Which is the exact nutritional blueprint every fitness influencer and biohacker claims is necessary to optimize the human body.
And Prajapati does not deny the physical results. The text openly acknowledges that a Rajasic diet is incredibly effective at building gross physical mass and explosive muscular strength. It states that this diet is historically appropriate for warriors, laborers, or wrestlers whose primary function requires aggressive physical exertion.
But there's a massive energetic catch. Rajasic foods require immense aggressive digestive fire to break down. That literal heat, that heavy, prolonged physiological agitation in the gut doesn't just stay in the stomach.
Exactly the mechanism Prajapati describes. That dense digestive heat translates into a hyperactive, highly agitated nervous system.
Okay.
While the physical body grows strong, the mind becomes intensely restless. A Rajasic diet creates a highly sexualized, easily distracted mental state. The resulting energy is incredibly volatile. It constantly seeks physical release to relieve the internal pressure.
So you might look like a Greek god in the mirror, but internally, your mind is a chaotic storm of impulses and urges that you constantly have to fight. You are building a massive engine, but you are fueling it with unstable, explosive gasoline.
Precisely.
Prajapati is arguing that if your goal is deep intellectual work, sustained creative focus, or spiritual growth, a heavy protein diet is an active hindrance because the energy it produces refuses to be contained.
It creates a state of perpetual internal friction.
And the third type.
Finally, the text outlines Tamasic energy. This form is entirely destructive. It is generated through the consumption of synthetic hormones, external chemical drugs, heavy intoxicants like alcohol, and rotten or highly processed dead foods.
The ultimate drainers.
Tamasic energy leads directly to physical disease, profound lethargy, and spiritual darkness. It is the antithesis of life force.
Okay, so we understand how diet corrupts the energy. But the text also explores the psychological mechanism of our constant energy leakage. Prajapati connects these ancient Vedic observations to what we now understand as the modern dopamine crisis.
This is perhaps where the ancient text is most prescient. Prajapati discusses how modern vices, specifically the endless consumption of digital pornography, the infinite scroll of social media, and hyper-palatable junk food, actively hijack our fundamental motivational architecture.
Let's bypass the basic definition of dopamine. We know it's the reward chemical. The nuance here is how the text maps the disruption of the effort-to-reward ratio.
Right.
In a natural, ancient environment, your brain releases a massive wave of dopamine when you accomplish something incredibly difficult that ensures your survival or the survival of your tribe.
Correct. You track and hunt an animal for 3 days. You receive a dopamine spike. You painstakingly build a shelter to survive the winter. Dopamine. You secure a high-quality mate through years of societal effort, physical discipline, and triumph. You receive a massive dopamine reward.
The effort came first.
The intense physical and energetic effort was the non-negotiable prerequisite for the neurological reward.
But modern technology has completely severed that link.
Prajapati observes the devastation of this severed link. When a modern individual consumes digital pornography or endlessly scrolls through highly curated, stimulating entertainment, the brain receives that identical, massive reward signal.
Well, they haven't done anything.
Right. The body has performed absolutely zero physical labor. There has been no societal triumph. The individual has taken no real-world risk.
The brain is biochemically tricked into believing it has conquered rival tribes and successfully reproduced with 100 mates, while the physical reality is that the person is slouched in a chair in a dark, pranaless room.
And this is where Prajapati's ancient observation aligns perfectly with modern neuroscience regarding receptor downregulation.
Downregulation.
Because the brain is being flooded with unearned, unnaturally intense spikes of dopamine, it attempts to protect its delicate neural circuitry from burning out. It does this by turning down the volume. It numbs its own dopamine receptors.
The music is too loud, so the brain unplugs the speakers. But the catastrophic side effect is that when you unplug the speakers, you can no longer hear the quiet, beautiful sounds of normal life.
Exactly. Prajapati frames this numbing as the absolute root cause of modern apathy and depression. Once those receptors are downregulated by digital extremes, normal, healthy activities, taking a walk in the sun, reading a complex book, having a deep conversation with a friend, no longer produce enough neurological stimulation to even register.
It's all just flat.
The baseline has been destroyed. The individual feels utterly dead inside. Their vital prana, their intrinsic drive to engage with the physical world, is literally being siphoned off through their screens.
They are bankrupting their internal energetic reserves to purchase digital illusions. It is a terrifying diagnosis.
It is.
So we desperately need an intervention. We need to move from theory to application. How does Prajapati instruct the practitioner to halt this leakage and reclaim their sovereignty?
Well, Prajapati does not leave the reader with mere philosophy. The text provides highly specific, tactical protocols for breaking the cycle of energy loss and controlling hijacked urges.
Let's start with the most immediate tactical intervention, the 5-second rule. Because when an urge hits, it feels entirely overwhelming.
Prajapati dissects the anatomy of an urge with incredible precision. He states that when a destructive urge arises, be it sexual lust, a craving for junk food, or the impulse to endlessly scroll, it is fundamentally a concentrated spike of urja,
Raw energy.
surging into the conscious mind, demanding physical release.
But the crucial insight is the duration of that peak, right? It isn't a permanent state.
It is a wave. Prajapati asserts that the absolute, most intense peak of that physical compulsion, the moment where the body feels it must act, only lasts for a very brief window. He quantifies this as a roughly 5-second period.
So the protocol is purely about surviving the crest of the wave.
Yes. Yeah.
Prajapati argues that if you simply refuse to physically engage with the impulse, you do not touch the screen, you do not reach for the food, you do not physically alter your state, for those 5 agonizing seconds, the wave breaks.
The acute physical demand subsides. The mind might still chatter, it might still generate intrusive thoughts, but the tyrannical physical compulsion shatters.
Yeah.
And what happens next is vital.
What happens?
That concentrated spike of energy doesn't disappear. Because it was denied an external exit, it collapses back into the body, transmuting from a demanding urge into pure, stored potential energy.
You literally capture the kinetic energy of the urge and turn it into battery charge.
Exactly.
That is incredibly empowering. It reduces a massive psychological battle down to a manageable 5-second window of absolute stillness.
Beyond the immediate moment of an urge, Prajapati focuses heavily on systemic energy conservation, linking the mind directly to the stomach through strict dietary control.
We discussed the quality of food earlier, but Prajapati also places immense importance on the sheer volume of consumption, doesn't he?
Yes. In the paradigm of Brahmacharya, the connection between the gut and the mind is absolute. Prajapati strongly advises consuming significantly less mass than modern cultural norms suggest.
He drops a quote from an Australian doctor in the text that is simultaneously hilarious and profoundly accurate. 1/3 of what a person eats keeps them alive. The other 2/3 keeps their doctor alive.
It perfectly encapsulates the Vedic view of overeating. Prajapati explains the mechanics. When you overconsume even healthy food, you force the body to continuously divert massive amounts of prana blood flow, nervous system attention, muscular energy toward the gastrointestinal tract.
To process all that mass.
Right. This leaves the brain starved of subtle energy, resulting in lethargy, cognitive fog, and a weakened willpower that makes you highly susceptible to lower urges.
To combat this, Prajapati emphasizes the mechanical process of eating. He instructs the practitioner to chew their food until it is entirely liquid before swallowing.
This is a pure energy-saving tactic. By performing the mechanical breakdown of matter in your mouth using your teeth and saliva, you spare your stomach from having to burn immense internal prana to dissolve solid chunks of food.
You're pre-digesting.
You are outsourcing the labor to conserve your core battery life.
It's all about plugging the small leaks.
Mm.
And speaking of small leaks, Prajapati introduces the tactic that I found completely unexpected. Maun Vrat, the vow of silence.
It seems disconnected at first, but it is deeply integrated into the physics of Brahmacharya. Prajapati posits a challenging progression. Before an individual can ever hope to master the ultimate physical urge, the creation of life itself, they must first prove they can master the creation of sound.
How does talking drain your life force?
Consider the physical mechanics of speech. It requires the forceful expulsion of breath, the complex coordination of the vocal cords, and constant mental generation of thought.
It takes effort.
Prajapati argues that speaking requires a significant output of vital energy. Therefore, unnecessary talking, mindless gossiping, or engaging in petty arguments is literally leaking your prana out into the air.
You're exhaling your vitality for no reason.
By practicing manvrat, whether absolute silence for a period or simply practicing highly deliberate economical speech, the practitioner learns the fundamental mechanics of internal containment.
Right.
Prajapati's logic is uncompromising. If you lack the internal strength to stop a fleeting word from escaping your lips, you possess zero capacity to stop the profound life force from escaping your body.
If you can't seal a crack, you'll never hold back the flood.
Beautifully said.
Okay, one final major challenge to this entire framework. Everything we have discussed, the meticulous hoarding of energy, the dietary restrictions, the vows of silence, it sounds entirely designed for an ascetic.
I know where you're going with this.
It sounds like a blueprint for a monk living in isolation in the Himalayas.
Yes.
Is this absolute conservation truly meant for regular people living in society?
Oh.
What about marriage and family?
Prajapati anticipates this exact resistance and addresses it comprehensively through the concept of vivahik brahmacharya, or marital brahmacharya.
So entering into a marriage does not disqualify you from this science.
Not at all. The Vedic tradition honors the grihastha ashram, the householder stage of life, as highly legitimate and structurally crucial for the continuation of society. However, Prajapati's interpretation of marital intimacy stands in stark, radical contrast to the modern perspective.
Explain the divide. How does a married person practice brahmacharya?
Modern society generally views marriage as a sanctioned license for endless recreational sexual indulgence, or utilizes intimacy primarily as a tool to soothe emotional voids and daily stress.
Right. It's just expected.
The text states that even within the sacred bounds of marriage, the fundamental law of energy remains immutable. Intimacy is strictly reserved for a singular, purposeful act, the creation of high-quality, Sattvic offspring.
So the presence of a marriage certificate does not alter the physics of prana. Even if society permits it, endlessly draining your Virya for recreation still hollows out your foundational energy. Prajapati is saying you must still conserve that immense power to fulfill your broader societal duties, your career, and your spiritual growth, only deploying the ultimate energy when you purposefully intend to manifest a new life.
It returns us to the law of equivalent exchange. The practitioner of Vivek Brahmacharya is voluntarily sacrificing the constant drip of physical pleasure for the profound strength required to build a resilient family, to protect their community, and ultimately to pursue their own spiritual liberation.
It's all connected.
The vital energy must be managed with absolute, unwavering reverence, entirely independent of your relationship status.
This has been a staggering journey. We need to synthesize the vast landscape Prajapati has mapped out. We began by looking at the modern epidemic of exhaustion, the reality of waking up every day feeling like your battery is capped at 10%.
And we have seen that Prajapati's solution, the science of Brahmacharya, is not merely a puritanical diet of no. It is not rooted in guilt, shame, or the violent suppression of natural biological functions.
It is, in reality, the ultimate yes to total human optimization. It is the conscious, calculated hoarding of prana, our foundational electrical life force, to fundamentally upgrade both the physical hardware and the psychological software of our being.
It's a complete upgrade.
It is the profound ancient science of alchemizing a basic biological fluid into an eternal spiritual nectar that fuels unparalleled genius, courage, and resilience.
Prajapati demands that we stop treating our vital creative energy like a cheap commodity to be traded away for digital likes, processed flavors, or momentary unearned dopamine spikes. We must begin treating it as the foundational, elemental bedrock of our entire existence.
So I want to ask you, the listener, directly. Take a hard look at your environment and your habits today. Where are you bleeding your prana? Are you lying in bed at midnight, scrolling endlessly, tricking your neurology into unearned dopamine spikes that leave you hollow?
Are you sitting under fluorescent lights in an air-conditioned room, forcing your body to burn its precious reserves to digest dead, highly processed food?
Are you holding a multi-million-dollar diamond and thoughtlessly using it to break a window?
Prajapati's text challenges us to fiercely reclaim our sovereignty over our own senses, because the Vedic truth is unforgiving. As long as the external senses dictate the actions of the mind, the life force will continue to drain until there's nothing left.
And that leads to a final provocative thought I want to leave you with, building on the radical paradigm we've explored today. Modern consumer society has spent decades indoctrinating us with a very specific definition of freedom.
Right.
We are told that true freedom is the ability to indulge every single urge that arises instantly, without friction. You feel hungry, tap a screen, food arrives.
Wow.
You feel bored or aroused, tap a screen, infinite stimulation is delivered. We live in an era of absolute frictionless indulgence.
But the tragic paradox Prajapati illuminates is that this limitless instant gratification has engineered a society of chronically exhausted, deeply anxious, and fundamentally powerless individuals.
If every passing urge dictates your focus, if an algorithm written by a corporation can instantly alter your mood, and if your daily environment is constantly, quietly siphoning off your core life force just to process the junk you consume, are you actually free?
Or are you simply a highly entertained, incredibly comfortable prisoner in a pranaless cell?
True freedom, as the ancient science of Brahmacharya suggests, will never be found in the ability to do whatever you want whenever the impulse strikes. True, unassailable freedom might only be found in the absolute unapologetic mastery of the self. Think back to that broken X-ray machine we talked about at the beginning. Maybe your machine isn't broken. Maybe you've just been searching for a mechanical fix to what is, at its core, a profound electrical crisis. Turn the power back on, retain the energy, and discover what your system is actually capable of achieving.